theme park owners did experimental work. Maybe only the worst ones here.
To get into some spoilers that we'll obviously save until after the film is released, the Mosasaurus scene. I'm just a sucker for anything water-based prehistoric creatures. I love the Megalodon, which is a whole different realm. That scene felt so Jaws-inspired. And this is obviously from the brainchild of Steven Spielberg. Did you have those conversations about wanting it to elicit a similar emotion? I had the moment in the theater when the Mosasaurus is first circling the sailboat. I did the sit-up, did one of these, and it doesn't even attack in that moment. It just, you feel that tension. Did you want to elicit a similar emotion that Jaws elicited 50 years ago?
I mean, yeah, that'd be a filmmaker's dream, wouldn't it? That's a masterpiece. But it was more like you can't escape it because it was the idea based on Steven Spielberg's idea with David Koepp. It was in the screenplay. They're chasing this creature in the water with a boat and a rifle. It's a fin. You're like, I'm reading it going, this is like some other film that you might have heard of called Jaws. And then it became a game of like how to not make it like Jaws, you know, because it was by default going to be that kind of vibe. And you talked about leaning forwards, but it was funny because we basically didn't do like those big test screenings they do for movies like this because of the fear of some information getting out. So internally in Universal Studios, we flew over and we showed it to the staff that work at Universal, and they all came into this big cinema. And I watched it with Alexander Desplat, who was having to do with the whole soundtrack. And I don't know why, I just thought it'd be really good for him to come and just feel the crowd. And it was great, because about that moment you're talking about, he just went like this. And he was right next to me and he just went like that, and he stayed like that for the entire movie. And I was like, oh, this is fantastic, you know what I mean? And as soon as the credits went up, he just turned to me and he went, I have to go home and start writing. Like, he had this fire in his belly and he went. And it feels like that. There's a certain point in the movie where it feels like, you know, the out of a roller coaster, kind of the safety harness comes down and off you go. And the goal was like, from here to the end credits now, it's just gonna have this momentum. And yeah, that's like one of my favorite parts of the movie, is that when that all starts happening.
Yeah, it's a no turning back moment. Something that scared the shit out of me, I can't mince my words, is the D-Rex.
Okay.
Oh my God, like you bookended this film with the D-Rex. We obviously got a little taste in the opening scene, and then we get a full on clearer shot. I love how whenever there's the scary dinosaurs like that, it happens at night, and you only get the lighting through way of the flares. I think it's such a genius way to shoot it. The D-Rex gave me vibes of a xenomorph, of a Rancor from Star Wars, and a little bit of the Cloverfield monster as well.
Okay.
What were your inspirations when it came to crafting the D-Rex?
You got two of them.
Okay.
The other ones were a T-Rex, you know. And then the animators start animating. It was funny because you could write in a script. Imagine we were dinosaurs making a movie about humans. You could write in a script, and then a human appears. And like that's all the information you'd ever need. And the animators obviously, which human? Like, how is he behaving? What kind of actor? Like, when you build these models of these creatures, they're all built like very static, like it's called a T-pose, or this very sort of like default pose. And they look terrible, and they only really come to life when they've been posed, you know, and they've got like a bit of an attitude. And so they were like, well, what's the attitude? What's the character? And I had to think about it for a second. I was like, okay, go rewatch David Lynch's The Elephant Man. And it was this idea of like someone who didn't choose for this to happen to them. You might be afraid of them and want them gone, but you start to feel a bit like of empathy, like they've got breathing difficulties and they can't quite walk properly and things like this. And I like that being torn between like, it's a monster and I want to get rid of it, but I sort of like I feel a bit sorry for it as well.
Yeah, what were the two that I got right?
Oh, the Xenomorph and Rancor.
Yeah, I was gonna say Cloverfield might have been a little bit out there. I think it was just the long arms when it was like coming down like that. That made me think of that iconic monster movie from, 15 years ago now? 16?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. Duncan survives. That was something that took me by surprise because we lose some of the crew throughout this film, but Duncan, that moment felt like, okay, this is a huge heroic sacrifice, and ScarJo as Zora will continue this franchise. Was Duncan always intended to survive, and is it if he is he planned to be a pillar of the sequel?
It was written that he died, and we went into it with this feeling like, okay, cool, he's gonna die, that's great. And then the studio were like, whilst you're in Thailand, because we're not gonna be going back, you wanna shoot a version where he lives? And this was a little thing that like tapped me on the shoulder as we were making the movie, and it's like, okay, all right, so like we can't half-ass this, because if it plays out that he lives, I'm gonna be living with that, you know, for the rest of my life. So I really want it to be a really good version of that and feel classy and everything. And so so I started trying to imagine, okay, how would that work? How would we play that story out? And you start to picture it. And then I started to think, I kind of like that. It's kind of cool, it's a little bit magical. And then what happens is, I think because everything, all we thought he was gonna die, and we wrote it that way and did it that way and shot it that way, and then he doesn't. I think the audience thinks he's gonna die because they do all the little tropes, like the final little, you know, thing you say to your best friend before you leave. It just tells the audience like, he's not coming back. Like, this is it. And we kept all those in, even though we knew he was coming back. And I felt like it might feel like a sellout. And then I just reminded myself, and obviously our film is nowhere near as good as this movie, but say E.T., you know, the Spielberg film, Spielberg dies in E.T. E.T. dies in E.T. Spoiler alert, sorry. And when it comes back, it's so euphoric, you know what I mean? You so want him to live. You don't feel cheated at all. And so that was something I held on to, like, well, maybe the audience won't hate me and think we copped out. And the reaction the other night, listening to it with the crowd, it was the best moment in the whole film, the reaction to seeing that flare. And they all instantly knew. It was funny, it was a little flare in out of focus behind Scarlett, and this applause happens. Like, they just knew. It could have been something else, you know what I mean? And I nearly teared up. I was like, oh my God, you know, studios are right sometimes. You know, I'm glad we shot that.
Yeah, it was a very beautiful scene, very beautifully shot as a whole. I'll wrap with this. Obviously, this feels like the start of a new trilogy, and I feel like there were some seeds you planted here that weren't necessarily deliberate setups, but could be watered for future installments. I'm talking about the dinosaurs in New York City and how they are reacting to the environment that's far from the equator, and also the heart disease situation with maybe we have a cure. Because I think to like the Planet of the Apes reboot where they had the cure for Alzheimer's and it actually ended up leading to kind of the end of humanity and apes taking over. Is there a chance that what we think is a cure could maybe lead to a new Jurassic Age, a Jurassic Apocalypse in a future installment? And also, do you have plans to play with the dinosaurs in New York? Because it was fun to see them run around my city.
These are all good ideas, and I'm gonna write them down after you leave the room.
With handwriting too. And
send them to David Koepp, because I'm like, yeah, maybe submit in that. And look, we tried to make this movie like a single standalone. When I look back on sequels, trilogies that I love, what they all have in common is the first movie was on its own, and then it became a high-class problem of how do we now make the others. And I've genuinely never talked about it with anybody. Like, not a single conversation with David Koepp or Frank Marshall or Universal about a sequel. I think everyone's like, all they want is for people to really like this movie and make the best film we can, and that's it. And then it's in the lap of the gods, everything else, really.
Yeah, well, this is a perennial summer blockbuster franchise. It feels right to have a Jurassic Park movie on the big screen in these hot, humid summer months. So congrats on making an amazing film. I know this is obviously a big deal for you. So enjoy this press tour while it's going on, and definitely, yeah, I want to see more in this franchise, but celebrate this one while it's happening.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Totally, thanks.
Survival is a long shot.
That's kind of our specialty.